You filled yourself with determination and set your 6 alarms for tomorrow. Determined to start the day early, ready to be productive, but when the first alarm goes off, the temptation to hit the snooze button is irresistible. All that enthusiasm from the night before disappears, and suddenly, getting out from under the covers seems to be one of the most difficult tasks in the world. The day that is just beginning already seems like an enemy you want to avoid and know the challenge you should face. While the cursor blinks on your computer screen, the to-do list seems to be watching you, begging you to complete it. You know you should be working, but you just can't get started. And when you try the internet, distractions become irresistible. You jump from tab to tab. You scroll through the social media feed, hoping the algorithm gave you something you can't lose. The cycle continues. You refresh YouTube endlessly, waiting for that video with quick edits and content that captures your attention for a few minutes. But this isn't one of those videos. Here, it's just me, a notebook, a pen, and some notes to share with you. Everything I've described so far, I've also experienced. You're not lazy, you're just lost. Lost in the middle of an avalanche of super stimuli that you can't control. And believe me, that's completely normal. Today we're immersed in the era with the greatest bombardment of stimuli in human history. It's not that you're weak or incapable, it's practically a miracle, being able to concentrate. This video will be different from the ones you're used to seeing. Here, without those frantic edits or illustrative times, it'll just be me speaking directly to you. Think of this video as a moment to calm the mind, a pause to give the brain a rest. My goal here, it's simple to explain why you're so overloaded with stimuli and show you 3 essential points to focus and regain control of your life, because I know how it feels. It's one of the worst feelings ever, resting your head on the pillow at the end of the day and feeling like a failure for not being able to complete simple tasks can be devastating. Maybe you didn't manage to send that work email, open a document and write 2 paragraphs, or even read the 5 pages you promised yourself. This doesn't happen because you're lazy or disinterested in life, but because at some point you lost the ability to focus on more complex tasks. Before I continue, I want to make something very clear. This video isn't going to solve all your problems at once. It's just a guide, a path for what you need to do from now on. The first step is simple. Watch this video until the end. I know that at this point you may be fidgeting, wanting to open another tab, check it out, the comments, or even glance at your cell phone. But stop. Focus here. This is the first step to regaining control of your mind, and consequently of your life. What I'm going to share with you is powerful. It worked for me, and it works because it's backed by science. Take a deep breath, calm down, and join me. The first point is to understand why you're so overstimulated. Yes, dopamine is the culprit, but not in the way many think. Although it's commonly associated with pleasure, dopamine's main role is motivation. There's a fascinating study that illustrates this well. They placed an animal with its dopamine system ablated next to a liver that, when pressed, released food or even cocaine directly into the vein, an extremely pleasurable stimulus. While it was near the liver, it continued to press and receive the stimulus. However, all it took was moving its body a little to the side, requiring it to walk to the liver, until the animal gave up. It knew the pleasure was there, but it had no motivation to seek it. Dopamine is linked to the search for pleasure that comes from outside your body. This was crucial for our ancestors, as it motivated them to hunt, seek water, and shelter. However, that same dopamine motivates us to stay glued to our favorite influencers' stories. For example, we live in a world of super stimuli that constantly bombards our dopaminergic network, elevating our search for immediate pleasures to the maximum. The secret is to learn this, and gradually regain control of your own motivation and your goals. This causes our dopamine signaling to become deficient. In other words, we need more dopamine to feel the same effect that we used to get with less. This is the reason why you feel unmotivated to read, write, study, or work. These activities don't have the same appeal as swiping on Instagram's Fit Dance, TikTok, or watch series on Netflix. These super stimuli hijack our reward system, tricking the brain into believing that we are about to do something important, something our life depends on. That's why we feel an irresistible urge to open an Instagram notification. One of the most important discoveries in neuroscience in the last 75 years is that the part of the brain that processes pleasure also processes pain, and both work like a scale. This is crucial, so pay close attention when you eat chocolate or swipe through Instagram. You experience a surge of dopamine and feel pleasure. The brain then compensates for that pleasure by downregulating dopamine, balancing the scale, which is currently tilted toward the pleasure side. To restore balance, the brain begins to weigh the pain side, but it doesn't always know exactly how far it should go. Sometimes it goes a little too far. The brain adds these little bugs on the pain side to balance the scales. However, these gremlins enjoy staying on the scale, staying there longer, which causes the scales to tip excessively toward the pain side. This is why after eating fast food or spending an hour scrolling through Instagram without seeing anything useful, you feel a negative effect. The problem is that nowadays there is no shortage of easy sources of pleasure for the brain. We constantly live with the scales tipped toward the pleasure side due to continuous stimuli. When you stop for a moment to be at peace with yourself, the brain begins to compensate on the pain side, and you find yourself thinking, "My life is horrible." The feeling of being overwhelmed by so many demands that you can't even perform a simple task like sending an email or reading an article is more common. What it seems like when we are in this situation is that we tend to seek a source of immediate pleasure to relieve the emotional burden we feel. But how can we resolve this? Although we cannot change the way our brain works, we can learn to manipulate that internal balance. The key is to first tip the scales toward the pain side by forcing ourselves to do activities that require effort, such as studying, reading, exercising, or following a diet. When we do this, the brain naturally responds by tipping the pleasure aside to compensate. This then allows us to experience pleasure in a more balanced and healthy way. Little by little, as you reduce your need for immediate pleasures, your life will become more satisfying overall. The secret is to learn to face pain in a controlled manner to reap the benefits. It may seem contradictory later on, but what you need to do is embrace discomfort in a conscious and healthy way. By seeking positive suffering, that which comes from productive activities, you will rebalance what will bring lasting benefits. In this video we will focus on 3 fundamental pillars to help you recalibrate that balance: the mind, the body, and the power of still. Starting with the brain, the first thing you need to understand is that you have control over what you consume. The state of overstimulation you find yourself in is the result of having lost that control, letting yourself be carried away by stimuli that you consume without a purpose. Of course, the good news is that you can regain that control. I realized that as soon as I began to consciously choose what I put in my mind, things began to improve. Otherwise, the algorithm chooses for you and it always opts for what is most stimulating and available. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should throw away your cell phone or abandon social media. In reality, the internet and social media are valuable tools. They help us access information, connect with people, and even provide us with moments of distraction. The real problem is not using these tools, but rather how we use them. The focus should be on having a more conscious consumption, choosing what you really want to feed your mind. If you only consume memes and swipe through the apps without thinking, that's like fast food on the internet. I'm not saying it's bad from time to time. We all love a pizza from time to time. But imagine eating fast food for every meal every day. That would affect your health, right? In the same way, consuming content without constant criteria can negatively affect your mind. If you want to have a healthy relationship with the internet, it's necessary to be selective. Therefore, the challenge is to discover which areas of your life you have a genuine interest in and seek out content that feeds that curiosity. By doing so, you will not only enjoy the internet in a more productive way, but you will also once again feel true pleasure in the things you consume and do every day. If you've made it this far, you've already taken the first step, a quiet rebellion against the noise. You paused, you listened, and for a moment, you remembered what it feels like to think without interruption. The world won't slow down for you, but you can slow down within it. The mind you thought was lost isn't gone. It's just been waiting in the silence, and now it's time to bring it back. Subscribe if you want to free your mind, and thanks for watching.